Imagine an old apartment in the middle of Hong Kong in 1999. The neon lights from the busy streets flicker faintly through the thin curtains. But inside that room, there is no light, only darkness. In one corner of the room stands a large Hello Kitty doll, taller than a child, its innocent smile frozen in place like any ordinary toy. Yet behind that smile lies a terrible secret, a mystery so dark that the entire world would soon shudder. This case would later be remembered as the Hello Kitty murder, a crime that scarred Hong Kong forever, and to this day is considered one of the most horrifying cases in Asia. Tonight, let's step inside the shadows, peel away the innocence of a child's toy, and face the terrifying truth it once concealed.
The victim was a young woman named Man-yee. She was born in 1976, and her childhood was far from easy. She grew up in an unstable home and spent much of her teenage years surviving on the streets. As an adult, she worked in a nightclub in Hong Kong's red light district. Fan got married and even had a son, but her marriage didn't last. After the divorce, she had to raise her child alone while still struggling with her own survival. Those close to her described her as friendly, sometimes even cheerful, despite the difficulties she faced. But no one could have imagined that her life would end in a way so tragic and cruel. On the other side were the men who would seal her fate. Chan Man-lok, a former member of the triads involved in drugs, gambling, and extortion, along with his accomplices Leong Shing-cho and Leong Wei-lun. There was also a 14-year-old girl whose name was never made public, remembered only as the girl.
The story began with something small. Fan reportedly stole a wallet from Chan Man-lok containing a significant amount of money. To most people, it might have seemed like a minor theft, but for someone like Chan, this was unforgivable. In the world of the triads, losing face was worse than losing money. Fan tried to return part of the money, but Chan wasn't satisfied. He wanted to make her pay, and he wanted to make an example of her. In March 1999, the three men carried out their plan. Fan was kidnapped and taken to an old apartment in Kowloon, a densely populated district of Hong Kong. At first, she may have believed this was only a punishment, that she would be released once the debt was settled, but she never left that apartment alive. Inside the small, dingy flat, the curtains were always drawn, the windows closed tight. No one outside suspected what was happening, but inside, Fan was trapped.
For nearly a month, Fan suffered. The full details of what she endured are too brutal to repeat, but records show she was subjected to relentless abuse, both physically and psychologically. Day after day, she grew weaker. The men treated her as if she were less than human, their cruelty escalating as time went on. Eventually, her body gave out. After weeks of torment, Fan fell gravely ill. One night, she collapsed and never woke up again. For most, death would have ended the suffering.
But for Fan, the horror was far from over. Because what the men did after her death was even more chilling. The three men were terrified of being discovered. A decomposing body in a small apartment would attract attention quickly. They needed a way to dispose of the remains. In an act that shocked even hardened investigators, they mutinized her body in an attempt to conceal it.
Her head was ultimately placed inside a large Hello Kitty doll. A toy meant to bring joy to children was transformed into a grotesque container of death. From that moment, the once innocent doll became a symbol of horror, its smiling face mocking the tragedy it concealed. All of this was witnessed by the 14-year-old girl. Though her involvement was limited compared to the men, the experience haunted her. Night after night, she dreamed of Fan, tormented by visions of the woman's suffering. She began to believe that Fan's spirit was following her, demanding justice. Unable to bear the weight of the secret, the girl eventually went to the police. Pale and trembling, she told them everything. At first, the officers struggled to believe her story. It sounded like an urban legend, a nightmare too grotesque to be real. A woman kidnapped, tortured, killed, and her head hidden inside a Hello Kitty doll. But the girl's account was detailed. She described the apartment, the men involved, the objects inside. She gave the police enough information to act.
When investigators entered the Kowloon apartment, they were met with silence and a stench that clung to the air. The curtains were still drawn, shutting out the daylight. And then, in one corner, they saw it. A large Hello Kitty doll, smiling innocently, standing guard over a horrifying secret. Inside that doll, the police found Fan's head. Even seasoned officers, hardened by years of confronting crime and death, admitted they would never forget what they saw in that room. The three men were arrested and brought to trial in 2000. The case captured international attention. It wasn't just the brutality that shocked the world, but the symbolism, a beloved children's character twisted into the backdrop of a horrific crime.
During the trial, the testimony of the teenage girl was crucial. She recounted the events that unfolded in the apartment, describing the suffering Fan endured and the shocking aftermath. The men were eventually convicted and sentenced to life in prison. The girl, due to her age and lesser role, did not face the same punishment, but she would carry the trauma for the rest of her life. The Hello Kitty murder quickly became infamous, not just in Hong Kong, but worldwide. Books, documentaries, and countless articles retold the story, cementing its place as one of the most disturbing crimes in modern history. Even years later, the case still raises disturbing questions. How could human beings commit such acts? Was this purely about revenge, or was it something darker, something that revealed the true depths of human cruelty? Some criminologists argue that the environment of organized crime played a huge role. In the world of the triads, violence and dehumanization were everyday realities. Fan's theft may have been small, but to Chun, it was an insult that had to be repaid with brutality. Yet this explanation doesn't make the crime any less monstrous.
What makes this case unforgettable is the juxtaposition of innocence and evil. The Hello Kitty doll, a symbol of childhood, laughter, and safety, became forever tainted. Its smile, once comforting, now reminds people of the darkness that can hide behind the most harmless faces. The public was horrified. Newspapers around the globe splashed headlines about the Hello Kitty murder, and the image of that smiling cat became synonymous with one of the darkest crimes in history. For many, it felt like a nightmare that blurred the line between urban legend and grim reality. More than 22 years have passed, yet the Hello Kitty murder remains etched in memory. It is studied in criminology classes, retold in true crime documentaries, and shared on YouTube channels like this one. But at the heart of the story is not just the crime, it's the victim. Man-yee was more than just the victim of the Hello Kitty murder. She was a daughter, a mother, and a woman who once had hopes and dreams. Tragically, the world remembers her more for the way she died than for the life she lived.
And perhaps that is the greatest tragedy of all. The Hello Kitty murder reminds us that evil doesn't always hide in monsters or legends. It often lives within ordinary people, in ordinary places, behind ordinary smiles. And the question it leaves us with is chilling. If such horrors can hide behind something as innocent as a toy, how safe can we ever really feel?